Hello everyone, I'm Haley from Lowell Observatory, and this is this week's Mars Hill Almanac. This week we're going to finish up the last third of the summer triangle, Aquila the Eagle, and talk about which deep space objects we can see in that neighborhood. But first, let's check in with the nightly sky. The sun sets here in Flagstaff, Arizona at around 7:45 p.m. The moon is above the eastern horizon just after sunset in its waxing gibbous phase. Over the next week, it'll reach its full phase and then begin waning. By the next time we check in, it will be almost new in a thin, waning crescent. We are coming up on a penumbral lunar eclipse on July 4th, where the moon will be slightly dimmer around 9 to 10 p.m. here in Flagstaff, Arizona, as it just barely passes into part of the Earth's shadow. Check out our live stream of the penumbral lunar eclipse on July 4th at 8 p.m. Arizona time. Jupiter and Saturn are still close together in the night sky. Speaking of Jupiter, the opposition of Jupiter is coming up. Tune into our live stream of this event July 13th at 9 p.m. Arizona time. Venus begins to rise at around 3:30 a.m. and is bright over the eastern horizon just before sunrise in its crescent phase. Now, the last two sessions, we talked about the two brightest stars in the summer triangle, Vega in the constellation Lyra and Deneb in the constellation Cygnus. This week, we're taking a look at the final star of the trio, Altair, and its constellation Aquila the Eagle. So if you're up at about 10 p.m. here in Flagstaff, above the eastern horizon, you will see this last bright star forming a triangle with Vega and Deneb. This is Altair, one of the closest stars to the sun, sitting at just about 17 light years away. Altair and the two stars sitting next to it make up roughly where the head of the eagle is, right here. And then his body extends out this way, and he has wings here and here. Aquila sits right in the Milky Way, so there is a lot to see in this region. But for this week's Deep Sky Challenge, we're going to keep it in the spirit of avian astronomy and look for the Wild Duck Cluster. The Wild Duck Cluster is an open cluster of stars which form together and sit nearby one another in space. If you return to the star that marks the end of Aquila, this one right here, and look a little to the right and just a bit higher than it right here, you will see this fairly bright cluster with ease if you are using even just a small backyard telescope. These stars are young and iron-rich, so we believe they were created after another star went supernova. The entire cluster is only a few 100,000 years old, which really isn't very old for an astronomical object. If the Wild Duck Cluster was easy for you, you can try to look at the Eagle Nebula. I recommend a large telescope or a small telescope with a camera that can take a long exposure image to resolve this one. To find this one, you're going to start at Altair. Then look at the star at the center of Aquila, this guy right here, and imagine that the two form the first third of a line that extends onward, crossing this constellation right here to this spot at the end of the line. This is the Eagle Nebula, and if you take a long exposure of it, you may recognize it. This nebula was made popular by the famous Pillars of Creation image done by the Hubble Space Telescope. The Pillars of Creation is not a bad name for these features. This entire cloud is an active area of star formation, where new stars are still forming today. As always, we want to hear from you. I mentioned the very famous Pillars of Creation image, but that is far from the only space image. This week, we want to hear what your favorite space image is, whether it's a nebula, a planet, a stellar formation, or even of the Earth from space. What did you like about your space image? We'll be picking our favorite comment and sharing it in the next episode of Mars Hill Almanac. Until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.